Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. There were a lot of really crazy performances tonight from some of the league's best players, as well as some super mediocre performances from those same players. So here I am to tell you about all of those performances tonight. There were a lot of games, so I won't get into every single game, but I'm going to do my best to cover the ones that were kind of interesting or had some weird stuff happen. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe and comment down below what your favorite performance was from the night, your favorite game, whatever, just let me know, I'm curious. So, going into this night, by far the most interesting and craziest game that happened was the Atlanta Hawks versus the Portland Trailblazers. Now, in this game, going into it, this is one that you would expect the Hawks to win. Not only are the Trailblazers missing Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, meaning that they're missing their best two players, but Trae Young in this one put up 56 points and 14 assists. So, when I say those things, if I guarantee you 99% of the time, if I ask someone, hey, this is what happened, who won this game, they're going to say the Atlanta Hawks. But this is the 1%, because the Hawks lost. 136 to 131. And you're like, how the hell did the Trailblazers put up 136 with a starting lineup of Norman Powell, Anthony Simons, Nasir Little, Larry Nance Jr., and Yusuf Nurkic? Well, the answer is 26, 6, and 4 from Norman Powell, 21, 12, and 5 from Yusuf Nurkic, who was just bullying Clint Capella at the end of this game. He looked like prime Hakeem out there. 22, 9, and 2 from Nasir Little. And the player of the game for the Trailblazers, 43 points from Anthony Simons to go along with 7 dimes. He had 9 threes in this one. He was unstoppable on offense. The Hawks made this team look like God's gift to offense. They gave up 136 to a Blazers team without Dame or CJ. That is embarrassing. You can't waste a performance like the one that Trae Young had tonight. 56, 14 assists, 4 rebounds. He shot super efficiently as well. He was perfect from the free throw line. He was banking in half-court threes. This is his career high in points. Nobody's ever had 14 assists in a 56-point game. It's never happened. So to lose this game is super embarrassing, and it's kind of indicative of what's been happening with the Hawks all season. One of the biggest concerns for the Hawks heading into last year was their defense. They brought in all these guys, and the question was, how are they going to defend people? Like, they've got DeAndre Hunter, they've got Clint Capella, but how are they going to put it all together? And for a little bit of the season, it was kind of hit or miss, but when Nate McMillan took over, it kind of looked like they were figuring things out all the way up until the Eastern Conference Finals. They became a much better defensive team over the course of the year. Now, coming to this season, they've completely fallen apart. They've basically regressed back to what kind of people thought they would be heading into last season this year. They can't guard anybody. Clint Capella does not look like nearly the same defensive player, whether that's just him regressing or the fact that he was dealing with an Achilles injury and he's kind of still getting over COVID stuff. Whatever the case, Clint Capella does not look like the same defensive force who was a big reason for their defensive improvement last season. He does not look like that same player at all. You bring in the fact that DeAndre Hunter has missed some time. You bring in the fact that something feels off. But no matter what it was, this is not an excuse for giving up this many points. It's not. But the guys you have out there, you should be able to stop them. Or even if you can't stop them as much, you should be able to help Trae Young a little bit. Clint Capella had 22 and 11, but like I said, he was really just kind of a cone out there on defense for most of this game, especially at the end. Yusuf Nurkic was bullying him. 18 from Kevin Huerter, which is all right. Gallinari was terrible. 7 points in 35 minutes. Lou Williams was awful in this one. This Hawks team just feels like they're regressing so far. It feels like some move needs to be made to this Hawks team. They need to kind of shake something up. And I know they just made a run to the Eastern Conference Finals and the whole saying of if it's not broke, don't fix it. But the problem is at this point, it looks like it's broke. They need to bring in someone who can defend, someone who can create for others as well, because Trae Young can't do it all out there. While he has kind of mastered the role of the point guard position, he has been, in my opinion, the second best guard this season, probably only behind Steph Curry. Trae Young has mastered his position at this point. He's playing the best basketball of his career, and the Hawks are 16 and 20. And I know they've been missing some guys, but at this point, every team has been missing guys. Whether it's injury related or COVID related, every team has missed players at one point or another. So at this point, it's impossible to really even use that excuse for this team. They've regressed. Even when they're healthy, they don't look like the same squad. Trae Young is playing the best basketball of his career, and they're regressing. Trades need to be made. And in my opinion, there's one guy out there who might be the perfect fit for the Atlanta Hawks, but I don't think they'll do it. And I don't even know if the other team that they would trade with would want to do it either, because they've got a list of players that they want, and I'm not sure anyone outside of Trae Young is on that list for this Hawks team. That is Ben Simmons. And I know, the whole thing where he didn't shoot against the Hawks, they exposed him in the playoffs, whatever. But ideally, on paper at least, Ben Simmons gives them a defender and a playmaker, something that they desperately need both of those things, because they just can't play defense at this point. And Trae Young, while he's a great playmaker, he can't do it all himself. He just can't. So you've got to bring in a guy like that. I really think he could help this team a lot. And I know I'm not the only one. I have seen Hawks fans, crazy enough as it is, say similar stuff. Or just NBA fans in general say something similar, where it looks like Ben Simmons could ideally be a great fit on this team, because Trae Young's able to space the floor as the point guard. And I know you don't want to take the ball out of Trae Young's hands, but ideally, I really think Trae Young's game being a phenomenal playmaker could open up things for Ben Simmons as a cutter, as a kind of just roller to the basket in the pick and roll. Obviously, Ben Simmons still has to be able to shoot, because you've got to be able to keep the lane open for Trae Young, especially with those Clint Capella pick and rolls. But I think there is potential there for a duo. I'm not saying that's the only move they can make. I think there's a million players that they could trade for. They've just got to find some defense for this roster. They've got to get Trae Young some help, because at this point, the Hawks have let Trae Young down. I know they were a great team last season. They made that Eastern Conference Finals run. I get it. But right now, you have a great package, potentially, of young players and assets that you could throw together alongside like a contract and like a Gallinari to go out and make a trade. The Hawks, I said this in the offseason, have one of the better packages in the NBA to go out and trade for a star. I don't know who that star is, but when a star is available, they've got DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, who they've rumored to maybe be willing to give up for a first-round pick. They've got contracts to match. They've got all of their draft picks. Onyeka Okongwu you can throw in there as well. They've got pieces. And so if a trade comes along, if Ben Simmons is available to this Hawks team, I think that's something they should take a look at really closely and consider pouncing on. Because right now they don't look like they can replicate what they did last season. Even with Trae Young's continued improvement and brilliance, it doesn't look like what they're doing right now is working. You can't give up this many points to a Blazers team that's this depleted. You just can't. No one could guard anyone out there. The Trailblazers gave up 20 points to 4 of the 5 starters in this game. The only one they clamped was Larry Nance Jr., who doesn't really score that much anyways. So they've got to be better. They've got to be better defensively. This is outside of just this one game in particular was awful, but just in general, they've got to be better. They're letting Trae Young down right now. Shout out to Anthony Simons, by the way. I don't want this all to just be like kind of beating up on the Hawks, because Anthony Simons does deserve a lot of credit. He was hitting some ridiculous shots out there, but in general, that's not, if you're the Hawks, you can't be happy with this at all. This has to be super disappointing. And maybe this is a point where you have to look in the mirror a little bit. Shout out to Anthony Simons. He said he dedicated this game to, I believe it was his grandpa, who recently passed away from cancer. So prayers to him and his family. Great game from him. Like I mentioned, 43 points is ridiculous. I would love to see Anthony Simons get more of a role in this team. Maybe if they trade CJ, Anthony Simons kind of gets that opened up role as the shooting guard. We'll see. But for right now, he balled out in this one. So shout out to him. Moving on from that game, we have the Miami Heat versus the Golden State Warriors. As I mentioned, some players had pretty poor performances tonight, and Steph Curry is one of those players. 9 points, 10 assists. He shot terribly from the field, below 33% from the field. He was awful in this game, and it really didn't even matter, because one of those teams that's really depleted are the Miami Heat, especially when Jimmy Butler left the game with an injury to his left foot. We're not sure what it is. I couldn't really tell what it was, and I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to speak anything into existence. All I'm saying is I hope he gets better soon, and I hope he's able to come back to the floor soon. You did have a good game from Kyle Lowry, who kind of tried to keep the Heat in this one. He was really solid with 16 and 11, 19 from Caleb Martin, who had a solid one. Kyle Guy, UVA legend, shout out to him. I'm a UVA fan if you didn't know. Had 14 points. He continues to play his way onto a roster, whether it's the Heat or another roster. I think he will get a spot. 17 boards from Omer Yurtseven, who had a really solid game as well. The Heat tried to fight and stay in this one despite the Warriors really kind of destroying them. Outside of Steph Curry, Draymond Green had a really solid game with 5, 8, and 13 assists. You had Andrew Wiggins, who continues to make an all-star case with 22, 6, and 4. You had Jordan Poole, 32 points. This Warriors team, as I've mentioned in the past, is just so good, and their system operates super well to the point where they have a guy in Steph Curry who is one of the MVP frontrunners. He can play as poorly as this, and they can still win a game. They've just got a perfect system. Draymond Green is an incredible player. Jordan Poole is a great story from how poor he was his first season to really just leveling up every single year, now being a phenomenal six man. Klay Thompson looks like he's going to come back on January 9th against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So things are kind of shaping up well for the Warriors. If you can go in and win this game, even if this Heat team is super depleted, if you can go in and win a game like this when Steph puts up 9 points and shoots horribly, it's a pretty good sign for your success in the future. Moving on from that one, the Washington Wizards beat the Charlotte Hornets. I got to give some credit to the Washington Wizards. They had that really rough stretch, and now they're kind of bouncing back from it a little bit. Bradley Beal is starting to look a lot more like Bradley Beal that we're used to. He had 35, 7, and 8, 36 and 14 from Kyle Kuzma to go along with 6 assists as well. He had over 5 threes in this one. Kyle Kuzma is just one of those guys that I think he really got a bad rep from being Kyle Kuzma in LA. Kyle Kuzma has always been a really solid player and a great role player for any team that's trying to compete. And I feel like just the fact that he was in Los Angeles and he was kind of a meme, he's one of those players that he has a lot of those Shaq'd in a fool moments where you're just kind of like if I just showed you his worst moments, you would say Kyle Kuzma sucks. But Kyle Kuzma is a really solid player, a really solid 3-and-D guy. His playmaking is better than advertised too. I'm just happy to see Kuzma thriving in Washington, and he's having some really good games recently and hitting some big shots as well. Before that DeRozan game winner, he had a clutch 3. He had some big shots in this one as well, so shout out to Kyle Kuzma. On the Hornet side of the ball, 18, 4, and 2 from LaMelo, who kind of struggled a little bit, 25 from Rozier, 27, 8, and 4 from Gordon Hayward, 23 and 14 from Miles Bridges. They just can't guard anyone. It's similar to the Hawks thing we were talking about, but the Hornets have the worst defense in the NBA. They can't figure it out. They desperately need a big man that can guard the rim. We'll see if they're able to bring that together, but right now they continue to be awful defensively. The Houston Rockets played the 76ers, and the only reason I wanted to talk about this one is Joel Embiid. He had a triple-double, 31, 15, and 10, as well as 24 for Furkan Korkmaz, who had a really solid game starting in the absence of Tyrese Maxey, who's in health and safety protocols. But just watching Joel Embiid, the more that I watch him, because I watched almost this entire game because I had a parlay going on Tobias Harris getting 8 assists, which I know sounds insane, but he had 10 assists the other night. He had 6 in this one, so he was close. If you average those 2 games, he was right there. He didn't quite get it. It happens. But Joel Embiid, 31, 15, and 10. His footwork is incredible. The more that I watch him play, the more I'm just like, how did he do that? Is that possible? Because he doesn't move like... There was this one play where Garrison Matthews tried to draw a charge, and Joel Embiid stepped around him like he was a point guard. And it was ridiculous to watch. Garrison Matthews, his jaw hit the floor. He was so stunned. He's like, how the hell did he just avoid that charge? Joel Embiid is just so agile, and his ability to just manipulate defenses through his great footwork, whether it's in the mid-range. He had one possession where he did 2 crossovers on Daniel Tice and got him leaning in the mid-range and pulled up for a jumper and just nailed it. Kind of typical Joel Embiid stuff. But the more that you watch him, if you don't watch a lot of Sixers games, because I know they've been kind of meh so far this season, at least compared to the way they were last year, Joel Embiid is on a completely different planet right now, and his ability to just manipulate the game, his ability to move like a guard as a big man is ridiculous, and so you should watch more Joel Embiid. Moving on from that one, we have the Memphis Grizzlies and the Brooklyn Nets. This was a game where another pretty poor performance. Now, KD did have 26 points, but he shot super poorly, and at the end of the game, the Nets kind of brought this back a little bit, despite losing by 14 points, and Steve Nash kind of just stuck with the bench guys that were playing really well. So shout to him for that, because I think they did earn those minutes. You had solid minutes from Cam Thomas, Bruce Brown, David Duke Jr. as well, who actually now I realized put up 0 points. I don't know why I thought he played better than that. But overall, this was not a great loss for the Brooklyn Nets. The Memphis Grizzlies continue to roll. They're one of the better teams in the league right now. You had a great game from John Morant, who put up 36, 6, and 8. I think he's probably been the 3rd best guard in the NBA up to this point. You had 29 from Desmond Bane. And they feel like a team that is kind of on a little bit of a Golden State Warriors type path, maybe. I'm not saying they're the 73-9 Warriors or anything like that. But what I'm saying is they feel like a team that has a young star that is emerging, kind of similar to a Steph Curry, where he was really starting to come into his own, and then bam, they took off and they became a championship contender. You've got him. You've got Desmond Bane, who feels kind of similar to a Clay, where he's a really solid player and a great shooter as a good secondary guy who kind of could just fit any team. They've got a solid big man in Jaren Jackson Jr., who didn't play good in this game. He still has some improvement to make. They've got a solid center. It just feels like a team that feels kind of ready to pop. They're super young, and right now they're firmly in the 4 seed in the Western Conference. Finally, the Detroit Pistons beat the Milwaukee Bucks. That's really all I have to say. It's kind of ridiculous that they did so. 31, 10, and 7 from Giannis, 29 from Jrue Holiday. Chris Middleton only had 10, but Sadiq Bey has been on fire. He had 34 in this one, 19, 4, and 7 for Cade Cunningham, 24 from Josh Jackson. They kind of just had a third quarter where it felt like they really couldn't miss at times, and just over the course of the game, the Pistons really took over in this one. This is a big win for a Pistons team that's been super mediocre, so shout out to the Pistons for getting this win over the Bucks somewhat healthy. Those are my thoughts on the games today. Let me know what your favorite game was or your favorite performance. Let me know what you thought about the whole Trae Young thing. If you made it to this point in the video, comment down below. Trae Young is insane, or shout out Ant-Man for Anthony Simons in the comment section below to let me know you made it to the end. I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.